I'm going to be talking about some of the positive things about Neptune and how it's really one of the saving grace planets of this year's astrology, because it is in what's called a sextile to the planet Pluto. And again, don't get too caught up in the lingo of it. All you need to know is a sextile is considered favorable, supportive, astrological energy. And this is a long-term arrangement between these two planets. And they have been doing this sextile for since 2012. And it will continue until 2025. And this isn't uncommon. It's due to the nature of their orbits. Their speeds kind of match up a lot of the times to once they get in those signs, they're just hanging out in those signs for a while. So we've got Neptune in Pisces, and it is making a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. And we mentioned Pluto a little at the beginning of this talk. Pluto's kind of a heavy hitter as far as the outer planets go. It wants us to dig deep, to look at all the things we do not want to look at because they need to be worked on, and it's probably going to be hard. So Neptune can soften that edge with its support to make you remember why you would want to do the work. What are the gifts? Neptune is offering inspiration, spirituality. It's the planet of mystics and creatives. And this sextile is going to be tightest in late June through September. And I thought, well, that's good timing, because that's around the time we'll be feeling Uranus-Saturn square, exactly. So we could use a little magic around then. As well, the thing to keep in context with Pluto and the United States, and again, even if you don't live in the US, we're enacting a lot of the astrology. Maybe some of this is happening in your country too, but I feel like, well, maybe you don't have to feel some of this astrology because we're taking over some of this difficult work right now in our country. But that's because the astrology of the United States is such that on the day the Declaration of Independence was signed, that formed our birth chart as a nation. Now Pluto is very close to returning to the exact position it was at the time of the Declaration of Independence. And it will be, the exact Pluto returns is in early 2022 in February. However, you can already feel it's close, and it's within a few degrees this year. So that means we're up for some big changes. If Saturn-Uranus square doesn't bring up that feeling, this Pluto return sure does. And on an even more immediate level, sending the message for 2021, there's a new moon coming up on Wednesday at 23 degrees of Capricorn. That will be very close to the exact degree of Pluto. I think Pluto's sitting at around 24 degrees of Capricorn right now. So yeah, we're supposed to be having some sort of rebirth collectively, particularly the USA, but kind of everybody with this new moon energy. And Neptune can really help to soften that, help us remember hope, purpose, unity in the midst of upheaval. And I have some analogies. Last year, Elizabeth had a good one about Pluto kind of being the great composter. We spent a lot of time in last year's workshop talking about composting and disgusting things you would find that you just would never want to smell or look at. And that was kind of like, heads up, it's coming our way in 2020. And sure enough, so we're working in that. But then when you think of compost as fertilizer, and a lot of creative people use that to fertilize their creativity. And there's There's some artists and creative people who have written on this that I really respect. One is Julia Cameron with The Artist's Way. I kind of recently discovered that. Yeah, I knew of it, but much more involved. And she says, let our gardening hands be gentle ones. Let us not root up one another's ideas before they have time to bloom. Let us bear with the process of growth, dormancy, cyclicity, fruition, and reseeding. Let us never be hasty to judge, reckless in our urgency to force a natural growth. Let us remember that in nature's world, every loss has meaning. The same is true to us. Turn to good use a creative failure may be the compost that nourishes next season's creative success. Remember, we are in this for the long haul, the ripening and the harvest, not the quick fix. And so I thought this was so spot on, not just in our personal lives. That's how we could use it for our creativity. But if you applied that to what's happening in the world, you know, everyone wants the answer right now because it's so uncomfortable. Get us out of this pandemic, get us out of these tense situations. Why can't we just fast forward to the part where we're living in utopia? And it's like, well, we are fertilizing that ground. And so keeping in mind that could help uplift spirits as we go. And really on a literal level, I do think this is going to plant some seeds for creative flourishing. When I saw what was going on with the Saturn-Uranus square and that how that corresponded to the precursor to the Renaissance. And then I looked at this Neptune sextile Pluto and thought, yeah, artists have a lot to say right now, and they have a lot of material to work with. And art is one of the things that can be done kind of despite everything else. And in fact, it tends to get stronger when things are more difficult in the outer world. So this is something to treasure. This is a gift that pops out, a flower that pops out of the compost. Natalie Goldberg is another one of my idols. And in Writing Down the Bones, she says, our bodies are garbage heaps. We collect experience, and from the decomposition of the thrown out eggshells, spinach leaves, coffee grounds, and old steak bones of our minds come nitrogen, heat, and very fertile soil. Out of this fertile soil bloom our poems and stories, but this does not come all at once. It takes time. So I thought, that's another good reaffirming message. So there's a big call to let go. Pluto's, as I mentioned early on in the talk, Pluto's mantra has to do with let go to grow. And Neptune also encourages that. Neptune has a dissolving energy so that we can forgive, we can release grudges, we can dissolve things that we've been clinging to that aren't going to help us. And Neptune actually helps us experience the joy of letting go. I wouldn't say innately that Pluto helps us experience the joy of letting go. Pluto helps us experience necessary letting go. But because Neptune's involved, then it gets to be a bit mystical, a bit magical. I thought of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and despite having everything stolen out of their houses, the Who's in Whoville came outside, held hands, and sang. And that to me was kind of this picture of Neptune and Pisces encouraging the joy of letting go and the happiness that comes from within and from our connection with other people. So I think we've already seen some of this. Like I said, this sextile has been going on since 2012. And when you think of some of the most trying circumstances in this past year, especially with these wildfires and natural disasters, there was a lot of compassion in action. And I would say it crossed the borders of people's political, religious, other types of beliefs. There was people who just saw someone's house burning and went to go do something. So we don't really want the disasters, but that's a side effect. I'm hoping there'll be other things as we're going through this letting go, transforming, that's being kind of demanded by this year's astrology, that will help people band together and maybe be a bit more whoville about their attitudes. The other thing I thought was interesting about Pluto and Neptune is both of these planets deal with things that are hidden in different, slightly different ways. Pluto kind of wants to make sure they don't remain hidden. And so it can tend to have a harsh effect where a lot of people who maybe have a Pluto transit or they have Pluto strongly influencing one of their planets in their birth chart might think, do I have to have reality so hardcore all the time? You know, but then you're kind of relieved because you are not having the wool pulled over your eyes. At least you know what's up, but it's not always easy. Sometimes you want some escapism. Neptune can provide a little bit of that, again, as long as it is managed and not out of control. Creative expression, stepping into the magic. And Neptune is actually doing things that are behind the scenes that people can't see. And I was thinking about how the media really focuses a lot on what is negative, what's going on, really based on a lot of hate. And it kind of makes you appalled sometimes for the human race. But then meanwhile, there's all these acts of beauty and love happening every single day in the world. They're kind of undercover, underreported. You can dig around on the internet, and luckily there's a few sites here and there that highlight people who are helping each other. But I think Neptune is that sort of undercover, hidden information. If you kind of look for the magic, you can find it. So these are actually good allies. I'm glad that they've teamed up for this time period. Pluto in Capricorn has a lot to do with facing our biggest fears, which is no easy or light task. But when you have Neptune in Pisces along for the ride as kind of a nurturing force, it makes it more doable. And at a certain point, the desire for something more beautiful kind of overcomes the fears. And in fact, some people may feel that I don't have as much to lose. I'm letting go. So maybe I will try something that feels like a leap of the unknown to see if it can match this vision of something better. I always like the Anais Nin quote, and then the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was greater than the risk it took to bloom. I think that's some of the Neptunian energy embodied in that. So that's really what we have going on with these two. And it's big this year. And it never, at least if there's other astrologers who found an exact sextile, let me know. But I kind of thumbed through my book called The Ephemeris that lists the tables of planets. I never saw them exact. They're kind of doing a dance and they get within a few degrees of this exact sextile. And so it's definitely has its strong points. And I'm going to pop up my timeline one more time to show you this summer. Next, Neptune sextile Pluto strongest, right, in this time period. And at the same time, there's going to be this Jupiter and Pisces sneak preview, which is our next topic. So start thinking, potentially some magic in the summer. I wasn't seeing that right away. I had to kind of research some other astrologers' takes on things. And I thought, oh, that's where they're seeing the magic. because I was seeing Uranus, Saturn square, Mercury retrograde, and eclipses. But then you can also see the strongest expression of this sextile is occurring. So I am an optimist. I have Venus in Pisces. I feel a strong connection with the planet Neptune. It happens to be hanging around my Venus in Pisces right now. So I'm remaining hopeful that this is going to make things, add some beauty, some unexpected beauty, some much needed beauty in what's been going on this year. So I hope that people can use this in their personal life. And I would say Neptune also encourages people to take the high road. And I thought, well, if we have to transform, and Pluto is forcing us to, start from scratch in certain ways, and we have the opportunity to start over, why not take the high road, if we're going to have to start over anyway. So I liked that. I liked them as allies for that reason as well.